was really a different set of challenges. When I joined Dublin in 1990, initially as the Director of Development, if you remember back then, about 16,000 people. We had grown from 600 in 1970 to that number, so the speed with which growth and development were taking place was extraordinary. Outgrowth, I think, a start of Mr. Nicholas's vision of a little project up here, and Ashland Chemical and a few others who kind of got things going. But managing that growth and development and the challenges of managing that growth and development were really the things that were of interest to me in 1990. And what drove that development, when we look back now in retrospect in terms of kind of understanding the demographics and this wave of baby boomers that really so drove the housing markets of the last 40 years versus what those demographics are suggesting will drive the markets in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, is a new and different set of challenges. And I think that's what, in my second tour here with the city, what are the implications and how does the city prepare itself to be as competitive, to preserve the value of the stuff in Dublin is going to continue to stay here, but also continue from an economic development perspective to kind of have the financial base that the city has that really has provided this extraordinary quality of life, quality of services that the city has. So there's a part of this that you're going to bear with me today that reflects my data geek nature on some of the, I've tried to simplify some of it down to ways that I can communicate it better. But some of the data that I think is informing some of these trends, some of the differences. There's some analysis taking place regionally that I think is going to provide some real insights to this and to update you in general where we are with this Bridge Street idea that kind of kicked off about 4 years ago. And folks keep saying, okay, now when? What are we going to see first on the project to give you a sense of where we are and what's been unfolding. So we're going to start with some stuff, very recent stuff that's kind of emerging from some demographic analysis. This comes from some studies done for the region, recent report produced by the Pew demographic folks at the Pew Institute and others. I mean, some of the data just to begin to start to understand the big shifts that are happening demographically. If you stood back and look at the biggest elements of the shifts, first is the aging of the population. We have in this country about 10,000 baby boomers a day turning 65 from now for every year until 2030. That's an extraordinary shift, an extraordinary change. We'll show you what some of those implications are. That's probably the biggest single difference in terms of what the last 30, 40 year demographics were about. The other is the changing face of America. And if you look at this data here, that kind of shows 1900, this kind of reflects what the white population, black population, Hispanic population, Asian and other. You can see as we get up to 2010, how much more diverse that population is in terms of white population. And you see by 2060, we're about 43% white, Hispanic, probably the largest minority group. And you can see it's a much more diverse country than the one we've experienced for the last 20, 30, 40 years. That's the way the demographics are going. That's the nature and character of the population as the experts currently see it. The other aspect of We Are a Rainbow that I thought was interesting from the Pew work was this just notion just at the rate at which interracial marriage has, even categorizing by race is going to be increasingly difficult, obviously, as we move forward here. Interracial marriages, you can see around the turn of the century, up until today, 2010, about 15.5% of all marriages are interracial, and that is going up at a very, very high rate on there. So this notion of even being able to distinguish kind of racially what our makeup is probably going to get far more blurred going forward.